Hello, Podsmashers of the Internet, and welcome to a bonus episode of
80-Bit Podsmash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer. And right now we're actually drinking mead.
Mead! We actually already
awesome.
drank the mead.
We have
we
more.
haven't even started. Yes, pour me.
We are picking up where we left off
sugar
from our last episode, and we're going to update you guys on what's going on with the most recent post-BlizzCon Blizzard controversy.
Yeah, so we did
our stances on it.
Yes, we did a Blizzard controversy episode on, 3 weeks ago? A month ago, almost. And it was a pretty, rough, unedited episode. This is going to be similar.
This will be the same one.
Because we want to go fast. We want to go a fast turnaround?
We want to go fast.
So we're pretty much going to be putting up the day after we recorded it. So it'll be up, and you guys will have it in your hands tomorrow.
That said, there's no DLC. There's no favorite things.
Yeah, we're going to go right into it. It's all news. We're going to go right into it. Okay, cool. So Blizzard, BlizzCon, why are we talking about this? What happened last time on the bonus episode?
A chain of events happened.
Yeah.
So the whole idea circles around, and what came to a head was that Blizzard had fired Blitzchung Ningwei, or not fired, but he was a Grandmaster tournament winner in a HearthStone tournament, and Blizzard had revoked his winnings and fired the casters that were airing the event because he protested in favor or with the Hong Kong protesting that's going on in China.
And if you don't know what's going on in Hong Kong, we go into detail about it.
We do in the other bonus
episode. So bonus episode, bonus level, it's like 2 or 3 episodes. It should be in our feed, but it won't be labeled as one of the episode numbers. It's its own episode. So, we go into way more details there, but yeah, so basically what happened, the actual inciting event was that Blizzard banned him for a year, fired the 2 casters who were with him, and revoked his winnings. And thus begun the storm of backlash against them. So that pretty much, as soon as that came out, that was on like a Sunday over the weekend. And then like starting that Monday and through the rest of the week, there was backlash.
All the way up through BlizzCon.
Which we talked about because at the time we did the episode, there had been no Blizzard response. So there was not a Blizzard did not respond to the event for 5 days, I think.
Wow.
Since the backlash started. And so, again, the backlash really started in earnest that Monday. They didn't respond until that Friday.
And so
people were accusing them of, like, trying to get it in right before the weekend. So that people would forget about it over the weekend. Yeah.
Not look at it, yep.
But anyways, that's all tinfoil. So we're going to talk about what happened since we last recorded, what has happened since, and what has happened since the backlash started in earnest. So before Blizzard's response, there had been a communication over an official channel by Blizzard, and it was from it was over Weibo. Weibo, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it. It is the China version of Twitter, so it's the China equivalent of Twitter. So in China, they can't use Twitter in earnest, so they have another social media platform that's like Twitter called Weibo.
It's completely controlled and monitored by the government, and very restricted.
Yes. So Weibo, the official Blizzard Weibo account, posted a response to this that was something along the lines of, we will always, it was in Chinese, so all I've seen is the translations of it, but the bottom line was something along the lines of, we will always fight to protect the dignity and glory of our great nation, China, or whatever. And this was coming from a Blizzard channel. Now, let's rewind, because that sounds very damning at first, but this was not Blizzard Entertainment, the American company, making this post.
Nope.
This was their partner, NetEase, who is basically the Activision equivalent, like it's the publisher. Right. So in the way that business works in China is they have to partner with a publisher, and then that publisher distributes their games to China. So it was the NetEase Blizzard account that posted that message. So, again, that's just getting that out of the way. We're running through the facts.
Yep.
So, Blizzard's response. Danny, take it away. What was Blizzard's response?
Blizzard's response.
Like, official response.
What was that? That was a infuriating response that didn't really address anything.
They did reduce that was the one where they
rolled back the 1 year ban to 6 months, and
the firing
is also a 6 month ban.
Yep.
But they didn't offer his money.
They did.
They did.
They did. They
All
gave
of
him
it?
his winnings. Yes.
Okay.
So they gave him his winnings, and they reduced everything to 6 months, basically. they emphatically stated in their response that our relationship with China had nothing to do with our decision, which was the thing that infuriated players the most, because it so obviously did have everything to do with their business in China.
And it actually made it worse.
It did,
because if you didn't do that with Chinese influence, then what the crap were you doing? But anyway, so that's Blizzard's response. Then there was a collegiate Hearthstone team that was also banned for a show of solidarity. They faced no punishment initially, and were allowed to proceed during the time that it happened, which is hypocritical in all of its nature.
Exactly. So that was pointed out because they had shown up a sign that said "Liberate Hong Kong."
Yeah.
And at first, Blizzard did nothing, took no action against them. An American collegiate Hearthstone team that was competing in the U.S.
Right.
So there was no action taken against them. It wasn't until later, it was closer to BlizzCon, that finally a ban went through on them as well. Same terms, 6 months and all that stuff. But it was a bad face for them for a few weeks there. It was kept coming up as like, why are you not taking action against? So they were protesting out of solidarity with Blitzchung. Yeah.
And then Nintendo backed out of the Overwatch Switch event at the Nintendo New York City event.
Nintendo threw Blizzard under the bus. Blizzard backed out of the event.
Oh.
And Nintendo threw them under the bus on Twitter. Nintendo said, "We regret to inform you that Blizzard has canceled this event." Oh. And they made it very clear that it was Blizzard who was the one who made the decision to do that.
Yeah, you're right.
So that was that was still, you can see Nintendo distancing themselves from the controversy, very intelligently distancing themselves from the controversy. Other companies started coming down on one side or the other. Gaming companies, some did. Most stayed silent, but two notable ones were Riot Games, who make League of Legends, who are owned 100% by Tencent, a Chinese company.
Yeah. They
came out and, not surprisingly, said, "We just want everyone to know that we will also ban people if they..."
Right. Which led to a boycott from me. They had announced 7 new games, and I was like, well, I'm not going to look at them because I'm never going to play anything from Riot Games again.
Yeah. So they basically said that we will be restricting speech on our platforms during our tournaments. On the other end of things, Epic Games, Tim Sweeney, who is the
Tom Sweeney.
Tom Sweeney? Mm-hmm. Okay, Tom Sweeney, who is the
head of Epic
CEO,
Games.
Head of Epic Games, owns the controlling share. This is important. He owns the controlling share.
But only by like 52 or 53%.
Right, it's only by a small margin.
Because the rest of it's Tencent.
Yep, exactly.
Which is China.
Which the rest of it is China. Although he did come out and say bravely that he would not be restricting any speech on any tournaments for his games, including Fortnite. So
go Epic Games Store.
Yeah,
Continue.
Epic Games. That's a win. That's a win for them. In my mind. So yes, the other thing, so the next thing that happened in the list of things is Congress got involved. So this is where it gets nuts. So the fury and the furor was, usually this kind of stuff is contained to the internet, but this made it all the way to Congress. A bipartisan letter signed by the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the left and Marco Rubio on the right, two senators who couldn't have different beliefs. They signed, and then a smattering of other names I didn't recognize, but these two names that I very much recognize signed the same letter. It's not a bill. It's not any kind of act of law or anything. It was just a letter, an open letter to Blizzard, more or less, that was condemning their actions against Blitzchung. So that was crazy. And then, so leading up to BlizzCon, there were other, of course, more and more qualifying tournaments, and the Blizzard started cracking down on the Twitch chats. Now, again, the original story that broke was Blizzard is banning people for saying "Free Hong Kong" on Twitch chats.
Yeah,
that's not what was happening. They upped their spam bots, and anyone who was spamming anything was getting banned.
Yeah.
And so it just happened to be that a lot of people were spamming "Free Hong Kong." So
surprise.
Surprise.
They also took actions to ban signage and did they ban cosplay? Certain cosplays?
They did. They banned Winnie the Pooh cosplays, but I think they actually pulled that back because I saw some Winnie the Pooh hats and stuff like that in. For those who are confused, why Winnie the Pooh? The Chinese president Xi Jinping or whatever has been unfavorably compared to Winnie the Pooh. People say he looks like Winnie the Pooh, and he got offended by that because he's a big baby, and so he banned all Winnie the Pooh. Anything is banned in China right now. So that's for those who are confused, we talked about that in the other episode, but that's like a thing. So again, protesters in America have adopted that as a
jokingly said we should compare what's his name?
Xi Jinping,
Xi Jinping, the Emperor of China, to microtransactions, and then they'll all be banned, and then we'd be much happier.
Well, the other thing Blizzard fans did was they took Mei, a character from Overwatch, an Asian, I don't know if she's actually Chinese in her lore, but an Asian character from Overwatch, and they started drawing her with symbols of the Hong Kong resistance. So they made a black costume for her with there's like a lotus, I think, that is a symbol for that. They put the gas mask on her, which is a symbol of the protesters, umbrella, all that stuff. Those are all symbols of the Hong Kong protests that should offend the Chinese Communist Party. So they were trying to do the same thing, get Mei and subsequently Overwatch banned in China as a result of that. But I don't know if that's worked or not. Probably not. But it is interesting stuff. Anyways, all that was happening. Before I hit the last one, I forgot to write it down. Mitsubishi.
Oh yeah.
Pulled their support. They had been a sponsor of the Grandmasters tournament on the Chinese side, and they pulled their support from Blizzard. Now, this is, factually, this is an interesting one because I've heard both sides of it. I've heard, Mitsubishi is a Japanese corporation, and Japan and China have a long history of bad blood.
Right.
So anything that makes China look bad, Mitsubishi, and then also the statement was made by Mitsubishi Taiwan.
Right.
Taiwan.
That's what I was thinking.
Taiwan is not subsidiary. Taiwan is not recognized by the Chinese government as an autonomous state, even though it is.
Right.
So
similarly to Hong Kong.
Exactly. So
like Apple actually banned the Taiwan flag emoji from their phones in China.
Of course they did.
Yeah, like that was a known thing forever ago. So that's
So there's that. But I've also heard on the other side, I've heard people on the pro China end of this conversation. I don't know. They've said that like a third of Mitsubishi's business is in China.
Yeah.
So the reason they pulled their sponsorship is because they didn't want to be associated with, like, on the other side, they didn't want to be associated with the Free Hong Kong statement and the Free Hong Kong movement. So I don't know which is true.
Right.
I'm not sure if there's any way to actually know that. So there's tinfoil on both sides, I think. Okay, so leading up to BlizzCon, the last thing I want to say that happened before BlizzCon was leaks started to drop regarding the major announcements, most of which actually turned out to be true. The only reason I bring that up is because there was some tinfoil, some conspiracy theories that Blizzard actually leaked all that ahead of time themselves in order to draw the conversation away from the Hong Kong stuff.
Yep, that would make sense.
People hyped up. Yeah,
throw out
I feel like that's I feel like as far as conspiracy theories go, that's a pretty solid one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're finally at BlizzCon. So those are kind of the major things that happened
since the last time we reported to you, our audience.
Yes, so we are just catching you up on what's happened since. Some of these things are going to be major talking points for our hot takes. BlizzCon comes around. BlizzCon, the weekend finally arrives. For us, this was just this past weekend.
Yep.
What happened?
So
let's go through the things that happened.
Lots of stuff happened. All right.
So apart from the game announcements, we're going to be talking about all the stuff that's relevant too.
So right now, I'm going to read from an article on Kotaku from Cecilia de Anastasio, who actually recapped what happened. There was an apology from J. Allen Brack, the Blizzard president, and it goes like this. Quote, "We moved too quickly in our decision-making, and then, to make matters worse, we were too slow to talk with all of you. We didn't live up to the high standards that we really set for ourselves. I'm sorry, and I accept accountability. We will do better going forward, but our actions are going to matter more than any of these words."
That's it. That was his statement. Yep. At no point did he say the words Hong Kong, China, or mention the caster by name, or the caster and the competitor by name who was fired, or who is banned and fired.
Yep.
So, kind of a non-apology from J. Allen Brack. Other things that happened during BlizzCon. There were protests outside of the Anaheim Convention Center where BlizzCon is held. So that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. Multiple different human rights and anti-censorship groups. So Fight for the Future. I don't know if you know about Fight for the Future. They were there. There was another big human rights group that was protesting there. And then, of course, there were homegrown protesters, like Blizzard fans. The best one that I had seen was, "Let's dress up as Winnie the Pooh and spam BlizzCon or something like that. And they actually got together and did it, and they all dressed up in Winnie the Pooh cosplays and were protesting BlizzCon.
And the quote from that Kotaku article as well, Hong Kong protests are going outside of BlizzCon by Nathan Grayson, just a highlight for the kind of motivation there of what they're doing. This isn't just a Blizzard issue. It's all game companies and digital media companies. We need these companies to listen to us and engage in conversations with us to make sure that we know that we are being kept safe and free on their platforms.
Yeah, some internal Blizzard memos leaked. This is a point in their favor, just throwing this out there. Some internal memos leaked that Blizzard said it's very important that we do not mess with the protests in any way, including the protests that happened inside of BlizzCon. And those, as far as I can tell, that was honored because, like I said, I did see Winnie the Pooh cosplays. I saw some shirts, like the Liberate Hong Kong t-shirts.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of, and this leads into my next thing that happened at BlizzCon. There was like one particular WoW Q&A where it was an actual questioner, and he actually had a legit question about the new WoW expansion, and then he asked his question and then finished it with a very awkward "Liberate Hong Kong." And then it got really weird when some kid gets up and starts like marching in front of the stage going "Free Hong Kong, Free Hong Kong, Free Hong Kong." Mm-hmm. And then the guy who was mediating the discussion, he gave the kid a mic, so the kid said "Free Hong Kong" into the mic, and that was it. And like the developers who were on stage, they all thanked them, like, "Thank you for your input," to the kid who was protesting. So the whole thing was really awkward.
Yeah.
But honestly, from just a sheer like again, these developers probably likely have nothing to do with the decisions, so it's not really a time or place, or these aren't the people that you need to be protesting to, really. So from their point of view, I'm like, they handled it. I don't know what their particular thoughts are on the controversy, but as far as their way they responded to the protest, they handled it well. They didn't kick him out. They didn't try to talk over him.
Like it,
they just let it happen, and kind of
actually gave him a mic.
Yep, gave him a mic, gave him a platform to speak. So, I think that they probably had some very, very important, we cannot let this look bad at all. The memos that were going out saying, we cannot have the story at BlizzCon being that we're kicking out protesters or trying to silence free speech. So it seems like that was reflected in what happened.
Interesting.
Over the course of BlizzCon. So
those things I didn't know happened.
Yep. The last important thing that came out of BlizzCon was a follow-up interview with J. Allen Brack. So after his apology statement, he had a follow-up interview with PC Gamer Magazine.
And the reason we highlight PC Gamer Magazine is because he kind of divulged the most response to that interview.
Right.
Because he did a whole gamut of interviews with various outlets. So there's one at GameSpot, there's one at Polygon, there's one at Kotaku. But PC Gamer was the one that highlighted the most stuff and very verbose responses from J. Allen Brack. And I do want to highlight some of the questions that I thought were relevant to his motivations. And so I want to read this. And I'm going to highlight the author of this article is Stephen Mesner, to give him credit for this on PC Gamer. Please go check it out. I don't know if I'll link all this stuff off, so please do your diligence and Google. If I don't, I'll try to have it there in the show notes. So the first question from the interviewee from PC Gamer, I wanted to revisit the statement you made at the beginning of the opening ceremony yesterday. You said Blizzard is, quote, committed to everyone's right to express themselves in all kinds of ways in all kinds of places, end quote. And you made a commitment to do better going forward, that your actions are going to matter more than words do. Are you going to be repealing the punishment against Blitzchung and the 2 Taiwanese casters involved in this incident? J. Allen Brack said, we are not. The follow-up question is why? And then here we go. So this is J. Allen Brack talking in his quote. So one of the things that we talked about in the commitment to expression about all kinds of ways and all kinds of places is the fact that we're huge believers in free speech and we're huge believers in free expression. We have a long history of that being part of the culture of the company for employees. That's certainly part of the culture of the relationship that we have with the community. And so employees are free to post on their social media accounts. If you think about the people that we have that are esports athletes, our grandmasters, or anyone who is participating in esports, they're free to say and do whatever they want on their social channels. I feel like we have far more open set of guidelines and policies than really any other traditional sport that takes a view around making sure that all of the people stay on message. And so, That's how we think about free expression and how we've contextualized it.
All right, pause there for a second. I'm going to call BS on that because something I forgot to mention because I just remembered based on that statement.
Yeah.
Supposedly, so the news of this actually broke after BlizzCon, but supposedly this actually happened before BlizzCon. But one of the coaches for Hearthstone got on Twitter or whatever and said how he condemns Blizzard and how he supports Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And he was asked to take that down.
Ah.
So I cannot believe that they said that he said that the audacity.
This is the quote from
now
Dale
again.
Brett.
So granted, though, that happened before BlizzCon, and then he had this interview. So maybe he had a change of heart over the course of BlizzCon, but I seriously doubt that that's. Right. And again, that. So I call BS on that. But.
His quote continues, quoting Jalen Brack. We want the official broadcasts, which are a small percentage of the overall content that gets created, to be about the games. And we want those to be focused on the games. Again, it's not about the content of Blitzchung's message. It's about the fact that it was not around the games. If we hadn't taken action, if we hadn't done something, you can imagine the trail that would be in our future around doing interviews. They would become times for people to make a statement about whatever they wanted to on whatever issue. That's just a path we don't want to go down. We really want the content of these official broadcasts to be focused on the games and keep that focus.
Spoilers, that's probably, I think, the strongest statement he's made. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the strongest statements anyone's. I don't know what it is, but the wording and sort of the candor around the way he said it that time made so much more sense than the original official apology where they were just like, this wasn't about China. We promise y'all this was about enforcing a rule we had. Right. Like that just sounded so insincere. That sounded way more sincere and makes more sense to my brain. So I will say that's a point in Blizzard's corner.
And some people ask the question about, well, what if this was about a different thing? Like the content of this was free Hong Kong, but what if it was like LGBT or, gun rights or something else, some other big hot political topic? Yeah. So the next question that the author of this interview asks is it fair to say that if Blitzchung had said any political message, it would have incurred the same punishment? It wasn't that he was specifically calling for Hong Kong's freedom, it was that he was saying anything political. And then J. Allen Brack says that's correct. The content was not the problem. It was the fact that it was not about the game in question. It was something very specifically different. I think, and I don't want to speculate around if he had said this, that, or the other, and how would it have gone, I think it's difficult to think about, a difficult thing to think about. But it's not about the content of the message. There are many people that are supportive of him and his message. So he was basically saying it's not about the actual Hong Kong message itself. It's just anything during an official stream.
He's obviously trying to distance from the narrative that is Blizzard hates free speech and is capitulating to China. He wants to get so far away from that.
Right, you can tell.
Yeah.
And I want to fast forward to this article. There's a lot of good stuff here, but we're not.
So he addresses specifically the NetEase thing.
Yeah,
so
do you want me to read that part?
No, because I think the sum of
we
it.
can summarize that.
Yeah, the sum of it is what I said at the beginning. Is a lot of people were pointing and saying, well, on the one hand, you're saying this has nothing to do with China, but on the other hand, you have an official Blizzard channel that is this Weibo channel saying, we banned him because we believe in the glory of China or whatever. Yeah. And so people were calling out that hypocrisy. And
the summary of that is NetEase is their company. Yeah. So it's illegal for Blizzard to do anything in China. Yeah. Officially. Like Blizzard is an American company. So they have to partner with someone who's in China, a Chinese company that is NetEase. And they have a partnership with NetEase. NetEase was the company that tweeted in their Weibo tweet. Yeah. And a Weibo tweet, that they supported China and their government, which would make sense because they are a Chinese company.
Yes.
So this was not an American company showing support for China.
Brack he explained that.
Yep. And he said it was a common miscommunication and a misunderstanding in all of the fervor.
Yeah, and he also said that had Blizzard if they had come to Blizzard and say, do you approve us posting this, they would have said no.
Yeah, J. Allen Brack actually says the next question was we talked about the Pride tweet. Was it written by NetEase? Correct. We did not authorize it. We did not approve it. We did not have approved it. We would have not approved it had they asked. So he really did distance himself from that entirely.
Unfortunately, it's again hard. It's a little bit. So the truth is somewhere in between because NetEase says that they consulted with Blizzard before.
Right.
Posting that as well. Or before, I think, so they said they consulted with Blizzard, not before the post, but they consulted with Blizzard before making the decision to ban him. So NetEase and Blizzard certainly had conversations. Again, whether or not they approved that a post, NetEase definitely approved of the decision and was involved in the decision to ban him. So this is not obviously China's interest had something involved because China's people say they were involved. So, whatever. Okay, so those are the things that happened. So we went through we spent 24 minutes going through just a big list of things that happened, factually things that happened. What's your take? So we're going to spend the rest of this podcast more or less talking about what's our take on all of this. Where do we stand? Where do you stand, Termite? Where does Penguin stand? Yeah. Now that all of this has come to light and, basically a month has gone by and, nothing is different. Right. From
so
what we wanted.
You started with a much stronger boycott stance than I did initially.
I did. I was all fired up.
Initially, I thought, yes, Blizzard responded exactly as I would have predicted. They didn't really show a new side of themselves, and then things continued to snowball and get worse, and then I completely jumped in with a boycott of Blizzard. I uninstalled everything. I do not have anything currently installed that's Blizzard, and I intend to not buy anything from Blizzard in the future. And then, BlizzCon happened. I heard all these apologies, and I am happy and thankful that Blizzard even acknowledged it, because I initially had thought they were just going to ignore it and hope that the protests themselves would go away, and then therefore Blizzard's interaction with it would also go away. And so when he opened an opening statement with addressing it, even though he did it very poorly, he never even said the words China, Blitzchung, or Hong Kong. At least he's acknowledging something. And then in the post interviews, he's going through some of the details and hashing out some of these questions and expressing what seems like genuine responses to stuff. Granted, the PR nature of it. When you take this event and you boil it down to an objective event and not address it directly, you kind of use that PR speak that's trapping people in a corner.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to acknowledge that this event, because you don't want people to throw support. So if someone new is watching this whole entire thing on BlitzCon for the first time, they have no idea what's going on with Blizzard, and they're like, oh, there was an event. Oh, yay, Blizzard acknowledged it. Or then you're someone who knows all about it. It's an event. They're addressing the Hong Kong thing. Yay! But it's just PR trickery. All of that is just manipulation of words to get you in there, and I could see through that crap.
The thing that drove me crazy was he said our actions speak louder than our words, and then all he did following that statement was he was like, we've brought together 50 countries and we've put together some great games for you. He's talking not about things they're going to do.
Right.
Actions. He's talked about things they've already done. Right. That aren't related whatsoever to the Blitzchung thing.
And trying to attribute that to a credibility.
So I'm sitting there, I am hanging on to his every word at that point, because when he says, he said the words, our actions speak louder than our words, I get to the edge of my seat. And then he says nothing.
Right.
At least he says nothing relevant to the actual, he says nothing about we're going to revise our rules. He says nothing about we're going to, donate to a Hong Kong pro-human rights organization. He just says, our actions speak louder than our words. You're right. Your actions do speak louder than your words. We're going to be paying very, very, very close attention to your actions going forward. Yeah. I hope he realizes that.
And so, my boycotting Blizzard emotions are on a roller coaster, because initially they weren't there, and then you brought me in, and I was there, and then BlizzCon happened, and then I was easing off. I was like, okay, he acknowledged it. It's fine. This is all I can expect. Really, this is what I expect. This non-apology. Yeah. They did what they could. They did the best in their ability within the constraints that they have with money and shareholders and netties and all this stuff that they have going on. So I was kind of backing off the boycott, and then with future conversations about how how non-apology this is, and how in a spit in the face of everyone. And then I think I'm stronger to the boycott than I've ever been.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can think of that Blizzard could do to change my course of their thoughts, or how I think about them, is to come out and directly apologize to Blitzchung, directly apologize for speaking against free speech, and to that's not going to happen. That's a pipe dream.
Yep.
Or to what was my second thought here? Reinstate Blitzchung.
Just reverse
all the
action
bans,
they've already
hire
taken,
the people back. That seems even more favorable. But in that action, that's the action that they needed to take, that they alluded to in the apology, the non-apology that they gave at BlizzCon.
Yeah.
And so,
or like you originally said in the original episode we did on this a month ago, when you said the other thing they could do is they could say we're going to hire Blitzchung on as a consultant for future tournaments, or give him a role of some kind to show that you do care about this person. and you care about what he cares about, even if you can't officially come out on the side of it. Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that. So here's my thoughts, and I hope I don't throw you into another roller coaster.
You probably
because
will.
I'm on a roller coaster as well. You know, like part of it is, and I wish I could sit here and say that I am some paragon of human being where I can pick my principles and stick to them because I am a great human being. I'm not, guys. I really am not. And I am as susceptible to Blizzard's PR strategy as anyone else. And honestly, PR wise, I don't care about their statements. To me, the thing that makes me most weak in the knees about this whole thing is their game showcase. They came
That's
out
what they want.
They came out with a strong, and there's a part of me that says, they're a game company. They should be evaluated by the virtue of their games. But again, I am also trying to be a good person, so I do have some thoughts, and they are, again, I'm not, like you said, I came out hot and I was very mad. I still am mad. I don't think any of my actual anger about the issue has waned, but I've definitely mulled over this over the weekend. I have some thoughts. So and suddenly just blanked. It comes down to two things for me. I have to consider the real, like you said, I have to consider the realism. Like what is ideal and what is realistic.
Right.
The ideal is exactly like you said, what I want Blizzard so badly to do, what would totally just redeem them in my mind is this sort of recognition of recognition of what the actual problem is, which the actual problem is you look like you're bootlicking China.
Right.
And then some actual steps to fix that. Like you said, all the things that, I won't repeat what you said, all the things about reinstating, all the things about statements in support of Hong Kong, all that. That's what I want. That is an ideal that I know is impossible.
Right.
I know it's not even realistic it's not realistic for Blizzard, and it's not realistic for me to expect it.
Yeah.
So I look at it, and from there I have to look at it realistically and break it down. It boils down to two things: intention and action. So I want to talk about intention first. Blizzard bit off more than they could chew. They likely didn't intend to necessarily stifle free speech. I think I can take them in some regard at their word. There was an infraction, and the first thing that came to their mind is, well, if we let this happen, then we're going to have people just saying things like Hitler did nothing wrong, or people are just going to say whatever nonsense beliefs they have, and it's going to take away from what this is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about the games.
Right.
I definitely can see that could be a huge problem. So they were trying to curtail that.
Yeah, quoting the PC Gamer response.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
They probably didn't even realize what the actual consequences of their actions were going to be in this particular case. They were enforcing a specifically shady rule, like a rule that was worded intentionally to be
Blizzard's
interpretable.
discretion.
Yeah, Blizzard's discretion, essentially.
Quote in the policy,
it is anything that damages Blizzard's image or something like that.
Yep.
So it was intentionally written to be a shady rule to protect their business interests. And that brings me to the point with that, Blizzard essentially is just a pawn in this. If Blizzard were to go away, the problems for Hong Kong still exist. The problems for China still exist. The problems for American businesses still exist.
Yeah.
China's still going to get involved. If Blizzard goes away, nothing changes.
Yeah.
If China were to go away, that would be a different story. American businesses would then be free to, the free market would kick in.
Right.
People in China would buy American stuff because it would be free to buy American stuff.
Right.
Anyways, so that's kind of a separate point that I'll come back to. I won't go as far as to say Blizzard's a victim in all this, but they were at least pawns. Blizzard's not it's not like, oh, poor Blizzard, they were forced by China at gunpoint to do this.
Right.
No, they were forced by dollars
by money.
to do this.
Yep.
Yeah. So they're not necessarily a victim, but they are, I would say, a pawn. So this, what I'm trying to get around is their intention was to keep the focus on the game, and they failed to do that.
Yep.
They failed to keep the attention on the games, and they failed to keep the focus on that. And it was their actions that caused that, not Blitz. The irony is that they failed not because Blitzchung said free Hong Kong, and drew attention away from their games. They ironically Streisand affected themselves and drew attention to their own failure. So I said it comes down to two things, right? Intention. So there was their intentions, and I can realistically look at those. There's also the actions. I have to be realistic about what can be done. What can be done about this? And this is twofold. This is what can Blizzard actually do, and what can I do?
Yeah.
And so we'll start with Blizzard. And here's where we need, I think, a little bit of sobering realism, because I have been, for the past month, I've been fired up, and I want them to uniformly support free speech.
Right.
At the cost. I want it to cost them something. That's what I want. I want them to say something that will cost them.
Yeah.
Because that's what will redeem them in my mind. If you're willing to sacrifice, then
I think
you
that's
mean it.
The healthy expectation of the company.
Yes.
Yep.
And I would definitely agree. I don't necessarily think that's realistic for a company their size. So what are some things they could possibly do? What are some baby steps? What are some starts? The first thing that came to mind is a lot of the problem boils down to this shady, vague rule. If they were to come out and say, okay, we're going to rewrite this rule and we're going to clarify some things. We're going to clarify when it's appropriate to express free speech and when it's necessary to keep the focus on games. This should be clear in the tournament. This is a space where, like, first of all, they have to provide a space for freedom of expression,
right,
and say, this is the time to do it.
Yep.
Whether it's like pins or clothing or something that can do that, and then when is it appropriate to, when is not appropriate to do that? When does the focus actually need to be on games?
And as a business, as a company, especially in consumer capitalism America, it's totally fine and within their limits and in their statutes to do that.
Yeah.
Like Jay Allenbrack actually said, there are sports teams, there are sports conglomerates and businesses that are run where you have to stay on message. You have to put on a public facing thing, and it's well defined in contracts, it's well defined in policy, it's there. And if Blizzard did that, it would be fine. That's okay.
Exactly.
You can do that.
They also need to clarify what is restricted speech. They can no longer get away with using phrasing that can be interpreted however they want. They have to have clear boundaries. They have to say, like, this is speech that we consider that needs to be restricted. So that's another big part. And then the final thing is they need to clarify what happens when someone makes an infraction. There needs to be kind of a strike system. The first response to Blitzchung should not have been
scorched earth.
A scorched earth, you are banned for a year and we're taking your winnings. It should have been at least a strike one, at least a slap on the wrist.
It could have been a public vocal warning.
Yes, exactly.
With no consequence. Just, you have violated these and don't do this again. And for the rest of the community and for the rest of the people who are going to be doing this on our public streams, again, defining these are about the games, not about your issues.
Yeah, and then once an actual clear punishment system is in place, then they need to apply those punishments uniformly and fairly.
Yep.
Despite, like you were kind of hitting on earlier, if someone says Hitler did nothing wrong, punish.
Right.
Punish the same way that, starting with a warning,
right,
and then if you escalate it, then it escalates. Same thing with, like, again, they get to be the ones who determine this, but I would say it's same thing's fair with, like, protect we need to protect the earth, EPA, whatever, like
gun
climate
rights,
change,
LGBT,
gun rights.
There's so many political, cultural wars that are happening. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And they need to, if the focus needs to be on the games, focus needs to be on the games, not on what's happening on the planet, not what's happening with LGBTQ, none of that. It just needs to be on the games. So the punishment should be applied fairly and uniformly.
Yep.
They do need to allow, like I said earlier, they need to create some space where players can feel free to express. So I don't know what that necessarily takes, but somewhere where they can express movements they support. And then in that space, Blizzard should establish a CYA, cover your A, which says, the views and beliefs expressed by these players don't represent those of Blizzard or their partners.
Right, which millions of other businesses do all the time.
Like, why? Why does that not already exist? I can't imagine. Work slowly towards cultural change within the company. Those are the actions I think Blizzard can take that would be, again, I'm not going to say that would be like, okay, I'll lift the boycott now, but those would be good steps in the right direction. So here's what it comes down to me. So now I'm going to talk about myself. I'm going to talk about my actions.
Yep.
And I'm going to talk about what can I do. The problem that I came to realize, and there are two things. I can't, so I'll say three things. There are three things. There's one that makes me look bad, and I'll start with that. At the end of the day, I'm a weak person. And at the end of the day, I want to play Diablo 4. You know what I mean? Like, I love the Diablo franchise. I love Blizzard games, and they had a good strong showing, all things considered, this year. And I do want to play those games. So I'm not going to delude myself into thinking that did nothing to do with my, quote, softening of my view towards Blizzard.
Yeah.
So if people accuse me for that, if people look down on me for that, that's fine. I would hope that you wouldn't judge me too harshly for that. But it's more than just that. The other two things that stood out to me was A, Jay Allenbrack's interview, the candid, nature at which he was talking about some of that in a space. Again, I wish I was on stage in front of people, but at the very least, he did say something. And number two, the other big thing that had an impact on me was the fact that like the Q&A, like
Stuff?
protest that I saw,
Yeah.
was awkward, and it felt so misdirected. Granted, Blizzard as a company screwed up. The developers didn't, so that's part of the misdirection is like, okay, this is something that should have gone towards the shareholders.
Yeah.
But it also felt misdirected because I got the sense that, like, Blizzard is not the real enemy here, and I hinted at this before. The real enemy is China. The people who are actually trying to mess with our democracy, the people who are trying to mess with our rights is China, not Blizzard. Blizzard is joining them in it. Blizzard is capitulating. But Blizzard is also being manipulated by them as well. So like I said, if China were to go away tomorrow, American businesses would be free to just hawk their crap to the Chinese people and let the inherent value of those products decide.
Right.
The purchasing,
The
not
free market.
the government,
Capitalism.
not propaganda, none of that. Exactly, capitalism. So I think the action. So I'm trying to, for myself, I'm trying to take this as a chance to realistically look at the situation and go, okay, where should my focus be? Should I be so dead hell bent on bringing Blizzard down, or should I be putting my focus towards China? And so the conclusions I came to was like, okay, the things that I can do, I can contact my representatives and say, what are your stances on China? Like, I'm keen on voting for people who are willing to take a hard stance on China, who are willing to be hard against them, who are willing to... Our GDP is still double what theirs is. They have a huge GDP, but ours is still double. We could throw that weight around, and I think that our lawmakers should have the guts to do that. If our businesses aren't, our lawmakers should, and say, we're going to impose bigger sanctions, we're going to rank up the trade war, and if you continue these human rights abuses, we'll consider getting the UN involved and doing, those are the kinds of things that I want our government to be taking, so I need to vote and make my voice heard accordingly. So my focus, I want to change my focus towards China, and I want to vote in accordance and spread awareness, using this podcast as a platform to say, hey, look, the problems are with China. The problems are we have a foreign country that's trying to meddle with our democracy. And that's messed up.
So much that the government got involved when Blizzard was dabbling in it.
And sure, like, do I think I compared it to a a symptom versus a disease thing. Yes, Blizzard betrayed us, but they're a symptom of a bigger sickness right now. And if you just treat the symptom, the sickness doesn't go away. But if you treat the sickness, the symptoms will eventually go away. Ideally, in a perfect world, and if I was a perfect person of character, I would do both. I would treat the symptom and the sickness. And I would say I boycott Blizzard and do all these things against China. But taking a realistic look at myself, I have to, if I have to pick one or the other, I'm going to pick trying to treat the sickness. Does that mean I'm not going to boycott Blizzard anymore? I don't think so. I think that what's realistic for me is to slap a time limit on that boycott and say 2 years. They have 2 years to take some of the steps that I talked about. If they start taking some of those steps, I will start considering lifting the boycott.
What if the protests go away within those 2 years and then there is no more issue?
I've committed to Oh, I see what you mean. Like
the Hong Kong, they win. Right?
I can still look and see what actions Blizzard has taken. But again, I can't let my focus just be on not playing Blizzard games. If I do that apart from doing this other stuff, like without doing this other stuff, then I failed. You know what I mean? Like if I'm not spreading awareness on China, and if I'm not contacting my representatives, then it doesn't matter what I do to Blizzard. You know what I mean? At the end of the day. Now, I'm not saying that means, well, I shouldn't boycott them. Like, if that's all I do, fine. But what I'm saying is I'm putting a time limit on that so that I can take my focus away from that and put my focus elsewhere. And then if after those 2 years, I can evaluate then. And if I'm just dying to play Blizzard games, I'll have some grace on myself. You know what I mean? But like, at the end of the day, I will be at peace with my conscience if I've taken these other actions against China, because that's what's more important in my mind. That's fighting the disease, even if I'm succumbing to the symptom in the moment, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what I more or less, and I'm on the fence about that. You know what I mean? Like, I might then come back in a month and say, well, no, screw Blizzard, forget them. I'm keeping with the boycott. You know what I mean? So I'm still fighting with that internally, but that was the thought that kind of came to mind, is like, I might be able to bring some peace to myself if I put a time limit on it. But again, I'm not sold on that. So I'm convincible one way or another. So yeah, I do still want to see more action from Blizzard going forward. I'm not naive enough to think that it's going to be sweeping changes, but small steps in the right direction might be just that. Small steps in the right direction.
I hope something changes from all of this permanently. I hope so.
Yeah. So I still think a boycott in the short term is important, though, because it's kind of like, that's why I'm committing to 2 years, so I can say, you're not going to get any money from me for 2 years. Even if that doesn't include, even if Diablo 4 comes out after that 2 year period, that still for me is no WoW Classic, so no WoW subscription money, no World of Warcraft Shadowlands I'll be purchasing, no, I won't be playing Overwatch or buying Overwatch 2, which probably will come out within those 2 years. So that's still a lot for me to give up. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn by saying that. I'm just simply saying that's still a lot that Blizzard's not going to get from me that they would have otherwise.
What you have said is if you expect Blizzard to sacrifice or give a consequence, to feel the consequences, then so should you.
Yeah.
And your sacrificing consequence is not playing the things you want to play. Right? You're putting something out on the line. So because you expect the company to do so, you are doing so as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. Like that's a person of integrity doing that.
Right. Yeah. I wish I could have the integrity of saying, I shall do nothing ever again for them and give it all up. But I think that there's some compromise that can be had there. So I think my plan of action for now is to give it 2 years. And in those 2 years, I'll stalwartly not play or pay for Blizzard things. At the end of those 2 years, again, if Diablo 4 comes out after that, we'll reevaluate as the time comes. I do still want to see those actions from Blizzard. But yes, I'm sending a message in the short term saying, I hope this hurts. So...
Yeah, and I like what you've alluded to, what I'm processing and thinking about now is when you want to evoke change, you have to work with what you got. And I'm now thinking about how many phones exist in America that are all made in sweatshops in China. How many clothes do you wear? Every tag you see says made in China. Like, if you want to ban Blizzard, I saw on like Reddit the argument of like, well, then why are you buying shoes? Like, why are you buying Vans? Vans apparently has a China outlet that they make tons of Vans in China, so boycott Vans too. Boycott Fruit of the Loom. Boycott Hanes. What are you going to wear? Like at what point? Like,
well, even if you buy an American phone, more than likely it's made from parts
in China,
that were in China,
including the video game consoles that we play on.
Exactly, it's impossible to avoid all of it, and
you have to work with what you got.
And if you have to work with what you got, and you also can't like just kill yourself on these things. You know what I mean? Like not to say that you couldn't subsist, you could still live, but like, to remove all things that give you joy out of protest is not really a way to live either, because then in another way they're winning. You know what I mean? So I do think that in that regard, like what do we have then? Like what we have is our freedoms and our ability to contact our representatives and say, like, we can't escape this. Our dollar and our purchasing and our boycotting alone can't escape this, like this situation we found ourselves in. Harder because China has insinuated themselves inextricably to our lives at this point. What we need to do is say that needs to stop, and that can only be done at this point. It's like trust busting. It's like monopoly busting. They did that back in the 40s. You know what I mean? Where they were like, nope, no, you can't do this. Like. Because you've insinuated yourself so much into people's lives, you haven't given them a choice. And so that's where we're sitting. That's where we're landing now. So our only hope is, but like the government's the only ones who can really do anything at this point about it, about that bigger issue of not being able to buy or not buying China.
Yeah,
it's a mess.
I understand. I understand where you're coming from. I'm still on the side of boycotting Blizzard until they've acknowledged this stuff. Yeah, for now, indefinitely. I just don't feel good, like internally, my own moral compass does not feel good. And with that, I didn't consume any of the BlizzCon content. We'll get there because we are going to go through it. Penguin's going to educate me on what happened because I boycotted. I didn't want them getting a number from me on their Twitch streams. I didn't want them to have a click or a follow or a read on any of their stuff. I wanted to not engage Blizzard whatsoever, except for the article on Kotaku about the apology. But
that goes for Kotaku though.
That's true. Exactly. I like Kotaku. So circling back to your first point about how you are a weak person, but I'm going to highlight this because
I never used the word weak. So
how you said you hope you won't be judged by things. This is the worst. This is the most gravitating, has the most gravity to me. This is another avenue for people to have polarized and adverse feelings towards each other. We have turned gamers on themselves again. This is another internet toxicity cesspool, and I'm deeply saddened and grieved by what I alluded to earlier is people are being held to like, oh, you're going to boycott Blizzard. Okay, well now you have to boycott iPhone.
Yeah,
you have to boycott
unreasonable standards.
Right, like
we're
you have
holding
to,
each
or
other.
you're a hypocrite. And then the other side of the fence is, oh, you're going to support like Blizzard. You're going to buy their stuff. Oh, so now you're against free speech and you're supporting China. So now, like, where do you stand? Like now, people are being pitted against each other. It's like Gamergate all over again. And it's a horrible situation. It's super sad. So I do want to say to our audience, the kind of culture that we want to cultivate in our community, 80-bit Podsmash, is no judgment.
Yeah, so if you are still playing Blizzard games and still buying Blizzard games,
like whatever,
no judgment. Like that's a personal conviction that you can have for yourself. And we strongly think there are reasons to not, but we understand if you find a way. All I care about is like if you find a way to protest in your own way, and if you just don't care, I will be gracious and choose to believe that you have other things you care about. You know what I mean? Like there are you're just fighting other battles. You know what I mean? You're fighting battles that I know nothing about. And so in that regard, if you just want to keep if you want to live in blissful ignorance in this regard and just keep Blizzard as your escape, the games you play to escape, more power to you. I can't judge you for that. You know, we're doing this as a way to try to spread awareness and hopefully try to meet somewhere in the middle on this. But
we want to spark thoughts. We want you guys to think about this stuff through yourselves. We want to spark conversations. We want you to have conversations with your peers, bounce ideas and thoughts off. So this is a framework for which you guys can have that conversation like we are right now.
Right. And whatever action you choose is the action that you have hopefully chosen.
Right. And there will be no judgment. And I don't want anyone in this audience to accuse another person of our audience, or I don't want any of that. Like this is a community of acceptance, and we are going to talk about this stuff as adults, and we're not going to be divisive and polarizing, and we will accept each other with grace and love. And that's what I want to cultivate and beat that drum in the middle of all this, because as we stand, we are on different sides. You're kind of like 2 years in, you're going to relieve that boycott. You're kind of softened now.
I'll review the boycott.
Right, yeah, sure. And I'm still standing on the side of, I want to see Blizzard say, free Hong Kong.
Right, you're waiting for a
Hong
very
Kong,
specific,
right, which is a super ideal, and it's never going to happen, but that's what I'm holding out for. That's kind of the only thing they could do to relieve that boycott from my perspective. Yep. And so now I don't feel like it's okay for me to get excited about Diablo 4 and all that stuff, so I'm just not, and that's fine. Well, I'm not going to judge Penguin Man. He's not going to judge me, I hope, and we're just going to have that kind of like difference, and that's fine. And we want you guys to all feel the same freedom to do the same thing amongst yourselves. Yeah, I don't think I'll play Blizzard games if I still feel in any way guilty about it. You know what I mean? Like, like that. So in a lot of regards, it'll come down to what is my base? Where does my heart feel? Like, do I hurt playing these games, right? Because that's why I can't do it right now. Right. Where I am right now, if I were to fire up World of Warcraft right now, I feel so much shame. Just because I feel like I'm complicit in that. If that feeling still exists in 2 years, no matter what action has been taken or not, I will still not do it. You know what I mean? So that it'll be partially contingent on how I feel about the situation. Okay, so I did want we're talking about BlizzCon. We would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the other things that happened, and if we kind of basically hit on some of the major announcements, but there why are we going to go through the BlizzCon announcements given the controversy? You said it perfectly today. I just want you to see if you remember the reasons why we're even going to go. We are going to walk our audience through all of the announcements of BlizzCon. Not all of them, but the major ones for sure. To inform you guys on stuff, but why? Well, so for number one, we feel like we're not necessarily game journalists by name, but that's still something we're passionate about, is being informative about what's going on in the gaming industry. The wheels keep on turning, and as I hit on earlier, like the developers aren't necessarily the ones making these decisions. So they're still just making games, and they should be evaluated and judged on the games that they make, the products that they make. There's two heads here. I think I described it to you as two heads of the dragon. There's the business decisions that Blizzard is making, and there's the games, the development decisions they're making. And I think those development decisions are still important because they still represent movements in the gaming industry. And for better or for worse, good or bad, they're still moving the industry forward, and people are still going to be buying them. So we're going to talk about them. We're still going to talk about the games themselves. Before we talk about the games, we're going to talk about something even cooler that came out of BlizzCon. That is like, again, it just goes to show that like you can't just take a singular entity like Blizzard Entertainment and say everything about them is bad and everything with the word Blizzard is bad, or consequently everything with the word Blizzard is good and wonderful.
what you can see is there's like terrible things that come out of this company and there's great things that come out of this company. And one of the great, amazing things that have come out of BlizzCon this last weekend is a female competitor won that very Hearthstone Grandmasters tournament.
Yep.
Was won by a girl this
That's
year.
Awesome.
Yep. This, a Chinese player.
Yep.
And you know what? I know her. It's like V Loon or something like that is her like gamer tag. I don't remember what her actual name was, so I probably should have written it down. But I think it's important to highlight the fact that like that's a huge win because there's so much controversy right now going on with like female competitors in like, esports.
Yeah.
Right now, and whether or not they should have their own brackets or whether they should be allowed to compete against men. And then there's that whole controversy of like, and you know, with Blizzard games, like the Overwatch player who pretended to be a girl.
Yeah, that happened.
It's like, so there's like all this like crap that's going on. So to have just like this girl come out and win the tournament, like and supposedly from what I read, she was crushing.
And that's awesome.
Again, with Hearthstone, there's a bit of randomness. Any card game's gonna have a bit of randomness, but you know, people were saying, they were like highlighting the fact that like, yeah, she had some good hands, she had some bad hands as well as her opponents, and she crushed them.
Yeah.
So this is an exceptionally good piece of news that came out of it. So yeah, we're all, you know, congratulations to her, and you know, I hope she inspires more women to be brave enough, because bottom line, sorry guys, I hate to say this, women who are competing against you, they're braver because they face way more harassment than you do.
Yep.
She even said that she got in line to sign up for this tournament, and some guy came up to her and was like, "What are you doing here? This is no place for you."
Yeah, it's messed up.
That's screwed up, you know. Like she has every right to compete, and you know what? She showed him.
Yeah.
So that's nuts.
Yep.
So that's a pretty cool thing. So that's some good news that came out of BlizzCon. So do you want to talk about some of the game announcements? There were three big ones. There were three big ones that they focused on. The first one that they started with was they officially announced Diablo 4. It's coming. It's happening. It is, the vibe of it is way darker. It's way back to their Diablo 2 roots.
I did see a meme about how ridiculous it was that they kept saying it's darker, it's dark, it's dark, dark, it's dark.
It is,
it's darker
yeah.
tone. It's so dark.
It's so dark, guys. It's going to be so dark. Yeah, no, they've definitely tried to, like, I guess one of the criticisms of Diablo 3 was that it was, like, cartoony and light and bright and too much like WoW. I love Diablo 3, so, and I can see that criticism, but, like, part of what made Diablo 2 dark was that, like, it was limitations of the hardware at the time. And if you actually go back and play it, it wasn't that much dark. It was still a game that was more about the, like, loot chase than it was about the, like, it's not a horror. It's an isometric game. It's not going to be...
Diablo 1 was scary. Like, I remember playing that as a kid, and I was scared.
But it was because they couldn't render.
Yeah.
They couldn't render things in the, quote, distance. At the distance, they had it zoomed out. So they made the decision to make everything dark so they could, like, reduce the render, the screen render. So,
but tonally, the music...
Sure. But Diablo 1 is a totally different, like, type. Like, the Diablo 1 was just, like, play through the story.
Yeah.
Diablo 2 is where they introduced, like, the loot chase into the game, and that became the emphasis of it. Yeah. So, anyways, it's what they showed is way darker. They've showed off 3 classes so far. The Druids coming back, finally, which is sweet, and then the Barbarian and Sorceress, like, to be expected. But there's 2 more that they're going to announce before the launch of the game, and then obviously there's going to be DLC characters, more than likely. And I'll break down more of there's other elements, but I'll break those down later in a second.
Okay.
The next one that they announced was WoW Shadowlands. So, bottom line, it's a new WoW expansion. There's not much more to it than that. Story-wise, you're dealing with, like, they're bringing back vibes of the Lich King. The Shadowlands are the WoW's afterlife, so you're essentially traveling to the afterlife of World of Warcraft. So, to fight
Did you see, I saw a headline on Kotaku, but I didn't click on it. I have a chance to sit and look at it yet, but apparently there's now character creation tools that allow you to create Asian and African American people.
Yes.
And Blizzard had an explanation that was so bad that they said the story didn't allow for it until now.
I don't remember.
Or something. Did you see that?
No, because there's nothing in the story that should allow for it.
Right.
Now.
That was the, like, really, Blizzard?
Right.
Are you doing this? Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I know I'm ignorant because I didn't, like, go down that rabbit hole yet, so I can't really express any opinions on it. So I was curious if you did.
No, because I don't know. They are adding more, like, race options, but they're doing that across the board. So on the one hand, for humans, you can now make your character look more African American, more Asian in, like, their facial structures.
Yeah, before you could change skin color.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
hairstyles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're doing more of that. But then in other races, they're doing things like you can now play undead characters that don't have all their skin, like their bones showing. So you can make them look more I guess, more human in that regard. They're adding more like race options to like the dwarves. There's like a bunch of dwarf factions, and for the longest time, people are like, why can't we play as these Wildhammer dwarves that have cool tattoos and stuff?
Yeah.
They're finally adding those, and they're adding more stuff like that. So they're doing it across the board. All the races are getting way more customization options, which is in one regard a win. I don't know about the whole. I don't remember what their statement was. I do remember seeing their controversy about it, but anyway, so they're not doing a new race, they're not doing a new class, but they are doing is more racial customizations, which is something the players have been asking for a while.
That's fair. That's
the fact they're not adding a new class or a new race is still something that's controversial for them as well.
You have to caveat that entire question I gave you with Overwatch being like the pinnacle of gaming when it comes to inclusivity and representation of all types of people, and that's gender neutral folks, LGBT, African American, Asian, white. Like every race is represented very well in Overwatch, and it's acclaimed as a platform for representation in the gaming industry and kind of spearheading stuff. Like I feel like Gearbox wouldn't have made Flak genderless or non-binary if it wasn't for the foundation Overwatch laid.
Right.
And so Blizzard has made tons of advancements in that regard.
Yeah.
So just by that question, that's why when I saw the headline, I was like, what happened here? With this, like, seriously, Blizzard, you do not need another controversy on the table right now. And that's all. I was just asking.
Yeah, no, I hadn't read that take on it, but I had seen people had been complaining about it. I don't know how much. I don't know how. More. I feel like that's being made in some regards. It's one of those examples of like the journalism blowing that out of proportion.
That's what I was thinking.
Whether or not that's actually like a valid, it could still be a valid claim they're making. Like, why haven't you done this? But it's not something that I've seen really been talked about to a great extent.
Speaking of
Overwatch, they announced Overwatch. It is officially called Overwatch 2. So officially, Blizzard is considering it a sequel. But as I'll talk about, there's some weirdness about that. But the bottom line is they're releasing Overwatch 2. It's going to have a PvE story mode and a PvE like repeatable co-op mode. They described it like Left 4 Dead is the way they compared it. So it's going to have a PvE mode, and then they're introducing new game modes, new characters,
better graphics,
new maps for the multiplayer, the PvP. And then, a better engine, new graphics, updated. So I'll get into some of the ways where it's not a traditional sequel in a second. So I want to talk about some concerning things about these game announcements. So we'll review and do them in order. Diablo 4, they announced that they're going to be doing some GAS, some games as a service elements. They compared it to, so they're going to have like a shared overworld, and then they're going to have like dungeons. The dungeons are going to be like, you can do them solo. They're going to be instance. You can do them in a small group.
Sound like Destiny.
But on exactly. That's what they compared it to. It's like sort of a Destiny overworld where there's going to be like events for like, and you're going to run across other people, even if you're not grouped up with them. The biggest concern is that you're not going to be able to adjust the difficulty on the overworld. So, like, once you get, like, certain gear point, are you just gonna, like, blast through everything like you would on normal mode in Diablo 3? You know what I mean? Like, if you were, like, running Torment 13, then everything on normal difficulty was just a joke.
Right.
Like, not
one
even,
kill all the time.
You could almost passively kill things.
Just walking by them.
Is that gonna be what it's gonna be like in the overworld in Diablo? Like, that's super, like, questions that people have, and I have. Just GAS elements altogether. It's like, okay, so how are you going to be monetizing this? That makes me worried about monetization as well. They also said the words that I hoped to never hear in a Diablo game, which is, there's going to be PvP zones. Are you going to have a PvP system? And more importantly, are you going to be balancing around PvP? Are you going to try to turn Diablo into an esport? Please, no. None of that. I don't want that. There's all kinds of other concerning statements they've made, such as like, it's always online. They're going to be scaling the number. They said the numbers and the scaling was too much in Diablo 3, so they're going to be dialing that back. But when they would use the words dialing it back, I'm like, are you going to be dialing back the power fantasy? You know what I mean? Because some of what makes Diablo great is that, like, I shoot out a fireball, and if I have the right gear, it's going to split into 3 fireballs, and those fireballs are going to become volcanoes, and those volcanoes are going to cause every enemy to explode and then set all their friends on fire. Like that awesome. Kind of like amazing progress of power is part of what makes Diablo really attractive to me. By saying we're going to be scaling that back, it sounds to me like you're going to be neutering what makes the game really fun to me.
The moment you invoke PvP, and what you were just talking about with the esports, if they go that route, yes, that lays the foundation for esports. But 2, Activision has done the layoffs. They told Blizzard to cut costs and create more games, which tells me they're looking for monetization.
Yep.
So you take that idea and apply it to Diablo. They've cut Heroes of the Storm's esports entirely. So that means that those people were laid off. They're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to stand up a new game that's what the crowd, quote, wants.
Yeah.
What the audience wants. And of course they're going to monetize the crap out of it.
Well, yeah, and
of
they've
course
got
it's
like
going to be esports.
They have horses. You can now get mounts in Diablo, but when I saw that, I'm like, oh, so now you're going to sell mounts in Diablo.
Yep, exactly. And if the least offensive would just be skins, what have you, that's fine. And the most offensive would be pay to win or pay to get a benefit of some sort. And then you have to think what you were just talking about with the power fantasy. They're limiting on two factors. One, they have to balance around PvP now.
Yeah.
All the classes have to be balanced to fight each other fairly.
Yeah.
And two, they're now scaling back that damage.
Well, if they're harking back to
so.
Diablo 2, like Diablo 2's PvP was all like duels and it was just a side thing. But if that's what worries me. If it's just duels and side thing, sure, fine, whatever. Like they actually had that in Diablo.
I think you're right
3.
about hitting your nail on the head with the esports wing and
but if they're going to try to like,
of that,
if they're going to try to make a system out of it where you can get gear and you can progress through PvP, then that's going to be the foundation for an esport.
And
crap.
how better way to continuously monetize a game than to do an esports?
Yeah,
league
exactly.
and team.
So that worries me. And then all of that's wrapped up in the fact that like their lead developer was a WoW guy. He was one of they pulled him from WoW and put him on Diablo. I'm like, ugh. So people are praising the tone of Diablo being so dark, just like Diablo 2, and I feel like they're missing what they're overlooking is the fact that a lot of the systems they've announced for it sound
red flags everywhere.
Very red flaggy. Do I still want to play it? Yeah, I do. It's Diablo. You know what I mean? That's where my weakness as a person comes in. I'm like, oh, but it's Diablo.
But you're going to be playing it on your PlayStation 5 and your Xbox Scarlet because they said it's not even Blizzard done, right? Was their quote? It's like not even close to being done. It'll be done when it's ready.
That's true.
It's not even Blizzard done.
It's not even Blizzard soon. Yeah, that's what I said.
Or soon. That's it. And so it's like 2022 probably.
WoW, the expansion again, as much as it's kind of cool they're doing Lich King stuff again, it's kind of disappointing in the sense that like I was hitting on earlier, there's no new race, no new class, no new like features. You know, usually they have their feature thing and they're like, you know, even every so far has it been like, oh, there's a new class, there's a new race, or the allied races they announced for BFA. And then there's like, even in Warlords of Draenor where they didn't do either of those, they were like, here's your new cool garrison, this is what we spent our time on. They didn't like have anything. They didn't have anything. So it's like new race customization's great. Something you should have been adding over the course of the years.
Should have
already.
been there anyway.
Yeah. So that's disappointing. And then the Overwatch 2 thing I want to hit on real quick is Jeff Kaplan, who's the lead developer, again, a former WoW guy. He came out and said, we're going to redefine what it means for this game to be a sequel. And what he said by that was, again, on the surface, this sounds great because they're saying like, okay, if you buy Overwatch 2, you spent years now building all your, like getting all your skins and emotes and stuff like that, cosmetics from Overwatch 1. He's like, well, all that's going to come over. He's like, in addition to that, everyone who plays Overwatch 1 that doesn't buy Overwatch 2, you're going to have access to all of the PvP content that's being added to Overwatch 2, including new characters, new maps, and new game modes for free. It's just coming. So that's basically just free content that's updated to Overwatch 2. So a friend question that a coworker had was, so if I pay for Overwatch 2, what am I getting? You're getting the better graphics.
Yep. PvE.
And you're getting all the PvE stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
That's it.
And if you don't currently own Overwatch 1, you kind of get that.
Sure, you do get that
because all of Overwatch 1 is PvP, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that comes with it.
Yep. So
not as a separate. It's weird because like not a separate game. Like if I buy Overwatch 2, I don't have Overwatch 1 in my library.
Right, but if I have Overwatch 1, we'll still be able to play the PvP
Will
together.
We? Yep. Is that okay? That's confirmed.
Yep,
so
that's confirmed.
Splitting the player
they're not
base.
splitting the player base.
Gotcha.
Exactly. So that's just it begs the question: what am I getting? So that just begs the question: is the content going to be worth full price, or what's the price going to be, and is it going to be reflect the value of what you're getting? So again, I'm not completely writing it off, but I do think you're not actually redefining what it means to be a sequel. What you're doing is you're making a very potentially expensive DLC. You know what I mean? Like you're making a very expensive expansion to the game. So that's what kind of concerns me. So those are the kind of the concerning things I've seen. My overall concern, if we can then like zoom out, so we looked at a lot of the specifics about these games. If I can zoom out for a second and say the things that concern me the most are I see Blizzard now heavily relying on past successes. Yep. This was the safest possible BlizzCon they could have done. Overwatch 2, new WoW expansion, and Diablo 4. Right. The only thing that could have made it safer was StarCraft 3. Right. You know what I mean? Like announcing another StarCraft RTS game would have been the only other safe thing they could have possibly announced. Yep. it's very safe. Everything about Diablo 4 is, again, everything is like, it's just like Diablo 2. Instead of pushing the game forward, again, the original leaks about Diablo 4 was that they were completely changing it to a new genre, a Dark Souls-esque, zooming in horror game.
Right.
Like horror action RTS.
Which would have been awesome.
RPG, which would have been great in its own right, probably. But they scrapped all that and went with the safest possible route.
Go back to Diablo 2.
Go back to Diablo 2.
Overwatch 1 is half Overwatch 2.
Yeah,
Overwatch 2 is half Overwatch 1.
It's already half Overwatch 1.
A WoW expansion goes back to Wrath of the Lich King.
Yep, which they've already done. Like Legion was their BC,
yep.
And then the Shadowlands is now the Wrath of the Lich King. Yep. Everything's hard, and then WoW Classic. You know what I mean?
WoW
Even
Classic,
the WoW Classic's existence just goes to show the best thing Blizzard's done was a game they already made. You know what I mean? Like in the last few years, and every single thing they've announced is just another. So it's a trend that I'm noticing in these Blizzard announcements that, again, on the surface, these games look attractive to some. They have attractive things about them, I should say. They're not, maybe as a whole, they're not necessarily attractive, but there's attractive things about them. But what worries me is this general trend of like, we don't know how to do anything new again. We don't know how to take risks anymore. And it feels like Activision more than it's ever felt to me before.
Yep, it really does.
Yep.
And I was about to use Destiny as a comparison, which is funny because under Activision, Destiny 2 came out and people were mad that all of their skins, all of their silver, which was the in-game currency, didn't carry over to the new game. Like everyone had to start from scratch. So there was a giant line drawn in the sand. Now Blizzard under Activision, with Overwatch 2 is doing this half what Destiny should have done.
Apparently they had to fight for that. Apparently they had to fight Activision for that.
Okay.
Yep, Jeff Kaplan said that it was an uphill battle to try to get them to agree to do that.
Wow.
Because they wanted, so at the Activision side of them wanted to do that.
Because that's what Destiny 2 should have been. You can carry all your skins over, all of your in-game currency, which was like silver or whatever you paid. I say in-game. It's an in-game currency that you spent real money on. It's called silver, and it existed in both Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, but it did not carry over, and it pissed a bunch of people off. And same with skins being like, you can use this skin on a helmet and it's consumable and it's gone.
Yeah.
Instead of having like a non-consumable skin on your entire armor set so that you look normal and not have it be consumable so that you can switch between all the skins that you've earned hundreds of hours in Destiny 1.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing all of that reversed in this Overwatch 2 thing under the same company's umbrella.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's weird. I'm glad they said it was an uphill battle because that is it shows Activision's colors for sure.
Exactly.
And their tendrils are in Blizzard and you can see it.
Right, whereas before they were two companies acting autonomously. Now it's not that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Things that we're missing, I should probably say, because someone out there is going to be mad at me for not saying this, but there was a Hearthstone expansion announcement, something dragons.
Yep.
something dragons.
If you're into Hearthstone,
if you're into Hearthstone, have fun with your dragons. More power to you. I'm just not. It's okay. Different tastes. So some things that we're missing, some things that we didn't see. We didn't really see any mention of Warcraft 3 Reforged dates or anything like that. Nothing. Yep. No. I mean, I think they said that it was still under development. The big news that came out of it is apparently originally they were going to be doing things like they're going to be like tweaking the campaign to be more closely related to like the current WoW lore. So they're going to be redoing some of the voice acting and adding some cinematics and some stuff like that. Apparently they've scrapped all of that because people complained they wanted the nostalgic experience.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
So they're not redoing it.
So they're not redoing it. They're just, it's basically just going to be an up-res version of the original Warcraft 3 campaign.
That's part of what I was
which sucks because in the original plan they were going to be doing like you could choose what you wanted, the original campaign or did you want the
That's perfect.
The new one?
Why don't they just do that?
Because people complained. So, yeah, whatever. So now we're just getting an up-res version.
It's so easy to boycott Blizzard right now.
So that was the big news that came out of Warcraft 3 Reforged, but nothing was actually announced about Warcraft 3 Reforged.
Wow.
Nothing in the StarCraft world, which makes sense because they canceled. They were in development of a first-person shooter in the StarCraft universe, a la Ghost, but not Ghost, but in the same vein as Ghost. That got canceled in order to make Diablo 4 ready for BlizzCon, is what I heard.
Yeah.
And then the big thing was no news about Diablo Immortal. Now, that's not entirely true because they did announce that it was still, they did give an update after, and they did have it on the show floor.
They had it on the show floor.
Yeah, they did have it on the show floor. So it was there.
And apparently it's vastly improved over 2 years ago.
Yeah, so it's still coming out. It's still a thing.
Yep.
But it was just weird to me that it makes sense. They wanted to pretend like they didn't have their mistake from last year. So I understand it, but it was also just weird that, again, I was like, is this game even still coming out? This game that you wasted all of our time with last year and for the last year has made you look bad. You're not going to say anything about it.
Yeah.
They did say it just was in like interviews and stuff later.
Yep.
So that makes sense. They didn't want it in the spotlight, but they should. I don't know. Part of me is just like, it's just so, yeah. So you're right. It is really easy. It's really easy to hate and boycott on Blizzard right now because they're just making some things.
Yep.
You know, Diablo 4 could, all those things like the PvP and the shared world, I can see a world in which that's not awful.
Mm-hmm.
They could make it work. It could be fine. It's just red flags. You know what I mean?
Yep.
A lot of these other decisions are stupid and I hate them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep.
Yeah, it's a weird spot. But yeah, I figured we should talk about all that stuff too because it's important. And for some people, it might help make them, like you said, make it easier for them to boycott Blizzard. So.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything. I couldn't say that I saw anything at BlizzCon this year that I was like, that's revolutionary. That's going to change the gaming industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's sad. You know, I'm just sad about it.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what I've talked to you before. It's just sad. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Like that plus Bethesda. It's just like, is this the inevitable fate of all?
I got hope for Bethesda.
Oh, do you?
I do.
I just worry. Like, is this the inevitable fate of all late stage capitalism mega corporations? You know what I mean?
I just think we're in a console transition. Across the board, and everyone's just doing their transitional things. So stuff just looks bad. We've had a lot of growing pains this generation with all the microtransactions and everything that's happening across the board.
10 years have just been like,
which we'll get into with our tots episode.
Tots.
Yeah.
Not the aughts, the tots, the tens, 2010s.
That's a whole topic for a different context than what we're doing tonight. So is that pretty much what you wanted to talk about?
That is, I guess, that's it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I want to beat the drum again. No judgment. Right. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you fall on with this Blizzard boycott thing. I want
hashtag boycott Blizzard.
I want to express the utmost love and respect for Chinese people.
Yes.
That's a good point. You've labeled China as an enemy. It is an enemy of America. It's an enemy of democracy. It's an enemy of free speech. Like there are things that the government, the CCP,
and that's what I want to make.
Party,
I'm glad you made that distinction because I have nothing against China people. Right. They are as much a victim, if not more.
Food, right. They are the worst victims. And I had this revelation yesterday because we were thinking about stuff regarding all of this. And I was like, what if, all right, I'm going to say this. China has 1.4 billion people in its population.
Mm-hmm.
In the United States of America, if you round up, 400 million.
Yeah.
There's almost 3 times as many people in China.
Yeah.
If you were to allow them all to have free speech, imagine what this world would be.
Yeah.
In technology, in innovation, in clean energy, in everything that we think of, that we consume every single day, that we enjoy in our lives, our car technology, our phone technology, our computers, our internet, our infrastructure, our roads, our cars, everything. Imagine 3 times the amount. Some of the smartest people in the world come out of China.
Yeah.
They are a brilliant race.
Yeah, and they're great people. And if they were able to, and that's what, again, like I said, I strongly believe, and this is something that you can say to your representatives if you're like, I don't even know what I would say. Just say, I strongly believe it is the right of every person on this planet to be able to purchase things based off of the value of that product.
Yep.
And that's what the crux of this is like, I want those people to have what I have, which is the ability to say, that's a good looking game, I'm going to buy it. Not, well, my government doesn't let me buy that game, so I can't play it. Right. You know what I mean? Like, that's the crux of what this is. So I totally agree with you. I want those people to have the same freedom I have, because I think those people are great. And like you said, their culture and everything that's coming out of their country culturally is fascinating. It's just that they have a corrupt government. Right. You know what I mean? They have a corrupt government and a bad president.
There's a coworker of mine who...
If that gets me banned in China...
Oh, we will be. We already are. We already said that in previous episodes. There's a Chinese lady that I work with who moved away from China, and she said, you get exactly what the government allocates for you. You can't go to restaurants and get food. You only get the food the government tells you your family gets based on how many people are in your family.
Yeah.
You can't be a job, or you can't have a trade outside of what the government has told you and your family you're to be. So if you're a farmer, you're a farmer. You have kids, they're going to be farmers. That's it.
Yeah.
You can't go to school with aspirations and learn a new trade and go do something else unless you leave.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the restrictions on those people. And they are truly the victims in all of this.
Yep, exactly. Which is part of the reason why I said, go do it. Call your representatives, and spread awareness. Right. Just have conversations, have these hard conversations with your friends and your family, and just... Yeah, if we all stand together,
yes,
we can actually make a change.
My Chinese coworker is amazing. She's awesome.
That's awesome.
So I love talking to her and getting...
Shout out Chinese coworker.
Yep.
Did you say her name?
I'm not going to.
then good call.
Yeah.
Shout out to Termite's Chinese Scout.
She's great though.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that's probably it for this week. You know, I know this is a heavier topic, and last time we were all like fired up, and now we just feel
we're tired. I mean, the thing has been
we're demoralized. Yeah,
it's been dragging on forever, and we've been following this thing and having all these emotions. It's just like, can we move on?
But please? I liked the content of that we were speaking about, and that's why we decided to, like exactly what you said. We did this in a bonus episode that we can move on. You know what I mean? So that we can say, all right, and we're not going to say that we're not going to talk about Blizzard. You know what I mean? We jokingly said over the past few weeks that we're like,
we're not talking about Blizzard.
We're going to talk about Blizzard. Yeah, like no, we'll still talk about Blizzard because their games are still important, and the games, especially the ones that I've played and that I grew up with, those are still good games by all intents and purposes. So yeah, those were mostly jokes, but
I also don't want to forget what happened, and I don't want to just move on and not look back either.
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully we'll be accountable to what Blizzard has been doing in the future and keep this in mind.
Yep, it's a big deal.
And continue this on. We're tired and exhausted about talking and thinking about it right now, but that's not going to go away on its own.
No.
I don't want it to. Like, we need to keep talking about these things.
It makes it so, I think I told you, I was like, it makes all the controversies of the past few years, even things as silly as do you not have phones and pride and accomplishment.
Oh, the last big thing was Gamergate. Like, this is between Gamergate and this. This is it.
Yep.
Yeah,
this is on par with Gamergate in regards to just ridiculous. And it's 1 hour and 20 minutes in. Hey. So that's our episode for y'all today. So let's end there. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this bonus episode. Termite, quickly give them where they can find us and find our other episodes.
80bitpodsmash.com. If you're joining us for the first time because of this one bonus episode, we have been in business for over 2 years.
Yeah.
We have over 100 episodes across 100 different topics. Find us all. They're non-sequential. You can just jump into whatever you're interested in at 80bitpodsmash.com. We have iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify. We are everywhere. And if you want us to be somewhere we're not, let us know. We'll put ourselves there. We're also on all social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit. We have 80-bit Podsmash is our tag. You can add us anywhere you want. You can create threads on our subreddit if you would like and start a discussion and a conversation. We're also on Discord, with which there will be a link to our Discord channel for you to join us at any point through most of our newer show notes ever since we set up the Discord from now.
Yep, exactly. If we offended you or said something factually incorrect on this episode,
let us know.
That's where where you can tell us where all those things are.
Yep.
We do have a pretty active ongoing discussion about this on our Discord. So, like he said, show notes, Discord should be in the show notes. So fire that up and talk to us, engage with us. So,
yes.
All right, we will see you
Monday,
which will be the episode about
mainstream appeal.
Mainstream appeal. Yeah, mainstream. So we'll be talking about that. So cool. Stay tuned for that.
See you Monday.